You know, I think it's safe to say Sea of Thieves has split public opinion. Take a glance at the comments of any article or video about the game and you'll find people with genuine enthusiasm for it, and a second group determined to explain to anyone even remotely interested in Sea of Thieves why their opinion is wrong and bad. One of the main things these detractors say is that Sea of Thieves is the new No Man's Sky, which is basically shorthand for an experience that promises the Earth but is actually rather shallow. Furthermore, that players were misled in the run-up to the game's release, and therefore if they dare to enjoy said game, they are obviously stupid and need to be corrected. Can you tell I've been putting up with these comments for a couple of weeks now? So is Sea of Thieves the new No Man's Sky? The short answer is no. Here comes the long answer. The thing that made No Man's Sky such an exciting prospect was the sheer amount of stuff being procedurally generated, promising an infinite number of moments of discovery. Every planet in No Man's Sky has its own type of plant life, animal life, weather systems including extreme hot or extreme cold temperatures, radiation levels, artifacts, NPC outposts, and, of course, sentinels, the robotic guardians of these worlds, with differing levels of aggression toward the player between each planet. And that's just the worlds themselves. Travelling through space sees you encounter asteroids and pirates and space stations, and you can travel seamlessly between the two just by taking off in your ship and pointing your nose upward. The problem with No Man's Sky, of course, was that it had all of these systems, but they never really interacted. The weather didn't bother the animals didn't bother the sentinels, nothing ever really touched. The result was that you had all of this procedurally generated stuff wherever you looked, but it was stuff just waiting to interact with you, and only you. There was nothing emergent about No Man's Sky, making it an absolutely vast game filled with beautiful things, yes, but it was a game that, ultimately, rang hollow. And I can see why people have had a good look at Sea of Thieves and decided it's the exact same situation. Much like No Man's Sky, the initial reveal showed a hell of a lot of promise to the player, telling them they can do whatever they want in the world, however they want to do it. And, much like No Man's Sky, people were also struggling to put their finger on exactly what Sea of Thieves is right up until launch, because it sure looked amazing, but nobody was really sure about what they were meant to be doing. The answer, of course, at least at the time of recording before more stuff gets added into the game, is that you're meant to complete voyages for 3 factions. The Order of Souls want you to go kill skeletons and bring back their skulls, the Merchants want you to round up certain animals and deliver them to a certain port within a pretty generous time frame, and the Gold Hoarders want you to go dig up chests on islands and bring them back to their outposts. And I won't sugarcoat it, that's 3 different types of fetch quest. The rest of the time you're just meant to go and have fun in the way you see fit. Sea of Thieves gives you everything you need from the outset and then turns you loose to forge your own legend. And as soon as people realised this, they got pretty pissed off. To an extent, I can see why. For example, there's no gear progression or meaningful character upgrades. Everything you earn is spent on cosmetic items for you and your ship, as you complete the same mission types repeatedly for each faction, slowly levelling up until you reach legendary status and get a different ship. Does that make Sea of Thieves the new No Man's Sky? Still no. It makes it a more simplistic experience than people were expecting, certainly, but that doesn't mean Rare has made the same mistakes as Hello Games. There's a very simple reason for that, and it lies in the game's systems. Sea of Thieves, like No Man's Sky, is a game made up of a lot of simple systems. No Man's Sky has radiation levels and freezing temperatures overnight, and Sea of Thieves has wind and storms. Sea of Thieves is also stuffed with simple objects, each with its own purpose. You've got a spyglass, a compass, a watch, a shovel, a bucket, a tankard, a concertina, and a hurdy-gurdy. You've got planks, cannonballs, bananas. It's a very physical game before we even get into all the stuff on the ship. The key difference is that these systems do interact constantly, and it's in the emergent moments created by these systems that Sea of Thieves really shines. Here are some examples. So in the world at large, you've got the wind. This system determines which way the wind is blowing, indicating that with handy wisps that travel along the air currents. On the ship, meanwhile, you've got the sails, and these need to be lowered in order to catch the wind and start moving the ship, but that's not all. The wind might be blowing against you as you head to a particular location, or it might change while you're on the way. As such, you have to angle the sails to catch as much wind as possible. If the wind is really against you, you might have to zigzag across the direction of the wind repeatedly in order to make headway in a manoeuvre called tacking. And then there are storms. These churn the seas and increase the wind speed massively, and even send down bolts of lightning that can seriously injure a player. Where ordinarily you can just point the ship at your destination, leave the wheel and trust it'll stay on course, in a storm you have to stay at the helm at all times, fighting just to stay on course. And then a storm can also batter your ship's hull, creating a hole that'll sink you if you're not careful, because of course the sea will just come pouring in and overwhelm your ship's natural buoyancy. The wind, storms, the sea, the ship's sails, its wheel and its hull. 6 individual systems all constantly interacting and influencing one another. And all of this is just to make sure the ship is going somewhere. And even the ship itself is rammed with little bits of emergent gameplay, even in its very layout, because the demands of sailing in Sea of Thieves are actually pretty high. As mentioned, the sails need constant attention, the helm needs to be tended to, and there's also the compass and the ship's heading to consider. Now, the map is an invaluable tool when navigating the Sea of Thieves, but then, of course, the map lives below decks, meaning someone is going to have to abandon their post to make sure the ship is heading in the right direction, opening up an opportunity for all sorts of things to go wrong. And sailing is just as tricky at night as it is in the daytime, if not more so, and that's why each ship is kitted out with several lanterns to help you see your surroundings better. Only keeping those lanterns lit is risky because it makes you visible from miles away, and more enterprising players might take that as an opportunity to engage in a little light piracy. And that, in turn, is a big problem, because while a voyage is considered complete as soon as you've dug up, rounded up, or cut down whatever it is you were sent to collect, you don't get any of the rewards until you return to an outpost and physically hand them over. Suddenly, everything feels a bit riskier, as all of these systems, the weather, hidden rocks and sandbars, and especially other players, those aren't just things you have to react to anymore, they're active threats to your success and to your payment. This being a game about piracy, anybody could sink your ship and just take the loot for themselves. So where do you hide the loot on your ship? Boarders often forget to check the crow's nest, but if it's a skull, that'll glow, so it might act like a lantern, and suddenly you've got all of these considerations that weren't explicitly programmed into the game. They've just grown out of the little pieces of the game and how they interact. Attacking other players, or trying to get away from them, is great fun in Sea of Thieves because everyone has access to the same ships. A player who's put 1,000 hours into this game is sailing a ship with the same stats as the person just getting started, meaning success boils down to how well you can pilot your ship or aim a cannon. I've been chased around by galleons who, by rights, should have torn me to pieces in my much slower, less well-armed sloop, only I've managed to outsail them and make it away without a scratch. The point is, you never know which way these encounters are going to go, and each one hinges around how well you can manipulate the game's systems. And not all of the systems in Sea of Thieves have to be earth-shatteringly significant. You've got the bucket, which is handy for bailing water out of a ship, but also throwing it onto one. Or you can throw up in it and throw that sick on someone else, which might make them be sick in turn, at which point you can catch that sick in your bucket and do it all over again. The instruments are really fun to play, especially if you board someone else's ship to do it, but they also sound different underwater. And it's all of these little things combined that make Sea of Thieves different to No Man's Sky, and also one of my favourite games of the year so far. There's an innate physicality and a glorious unpredictability to it, meaning that, yes, while you are doing fetch quests, the experience of doing them is so much more than some people are willing to acknowledge, because the key question for each player, of course, is whether or not you find these systems and this emergent gameplay good enough. I'll readily admit it's not for everyone, so if those players don't find it exciting, then fair enough, but just because it failed to get those people pumped up, it doesn't mean it's a careless or even a badly designed game. Is Sea of Thieves the new No Man's Sky? The short answer is no, you've just heard the long answer, and the pirate answer is no. Whatever your thoughts on Sea of Thieves though, hopefully you found this video interesting. If you did, there are plenty more on Sea of Thieves for you to watch, so give one of those a click now if you fancy it. Do like and subscribe so you don't miss anything else from Eurogamer. Thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.